Good evening, I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. The World Cup opens with an ugly victory by Brazil. No one in the stadium was happy, despite the fact that the score was 3-1. Can I explain it? No. Later on tonight, I'll talk to George Vesey, formerly columnist for the New York Times, a veteran World Cup watcher. He has a new book out called 8 World Cups. And my conversation with George, I learned a little bit more about Brazil's expectations. Apparently, they've expected to win every World Cup they've ever entered into, and by winning 3-1 over Croatia, everyone in Brazil is now in mourning. It's puzzling. Mary, a very good evening to you.
Good evening to you, John.
Mary Kissel, the Wall Street Journal, joins right now. She's the host of OpinionJournal.com, and today it was a pleasure to watch Mary talk to Steve Moore, who is the only official former member of the editorial board who covers sports all the time, despite the fact that he's the chief economist at Heritage Foundation. And you asked him to explain why soccer isn't popular in this country. He did a good job, Mary.
Yeah, he did. Who cares about the World Cup? That's what we titled the segment.
It's slow. Nobody scores. I think his recommendation is to remove the goalie so they can kick in from midfield.
Not to mention the terrible sportsmanship, John.
And then everybody falls down despite the fact that they're not hurt.
Flopping.
Yes, flopping. So we will discuss the World Cup throughout the next month because it's on for a month. Americans are going, you're kidding. Even the World Series is faster than that. But we will turn to now a sense of tragedy that's overcoming all of us in Iraq. And before we get to Iraq, we'll come to the decline and fall of a public man in Washington within these last days. Eric Cantor defeated in his primary in the Richmond area, 7th Virginia. Eric Cantor, the majority leader. And that has left the Washington punditocracy obsessed with what's going on in the House of Representatives. So we welcome Mona Charen, who's closer to Washington than we are, to comment on this obsession with Eric Cantor's decline and fall and who will be the new majority leader. Mona, very good evening to you. You've not written for the National Review Online on this, so I'm presuming a little bit that you're watching Washington in this fever pitch. Is it the World Cup? Is it that the baseball team in Washington is now in first place? Or is it the majority leader vote? What is driving the coverage on the Hill so insane? Good evening to you, Mona.
Hi, John. Well, I promise not to flop. But, I've read so much commentary in the last 48 hours about this election that my head is probably almost literally spinning, as I'm sure most people who follow politics feel that way. But we have news as of the last few minutes. There is now no contest in the race for majority leader, as I understand it. Jeff Sessions has removed his name from consideration, and so Kevin McCarthy, it looks like, will be the new majority leader by acclamation unless someone else steps forward. And so that raises the question, what really was achieved by the 60,000 or so primary voters in the Virginia 7th District? They traded one establishment figure for another. That much having been said, let me say that you mentioned Steve Moore. He has a very good piece up today defending Eric Cantor from the accusation that he was some sort of a rhino squish. He was actually not. There were some issues on which perhaps he didn't accurately represent the views of his constituents, but immigration might be one of them. But he does deserve to be remembered as the man who stood tall for cutting the budget and for resisting President Obama's desire to raise taxes. So, as he leaves the stage, we shouldn't kick him too hard.
It's a great point, Mona. And when you're in Washington for so long, you do develop a voting record. You have to compromise, and that doesn't excuse Mr. Cantor's votes for, say, I don't know, expanding flood insurance and the Export-Import Bank. But right. It is an explanation. But Mona, Kevin McCarthy, he's known as sort of a more of a political fixer than a policy deep thinker.
Right.
Is that the perfect kind of guy for this sort of job?
Well, and that is an irony because, Eric Cantor was a serious person. Not that he's dead. I don't mean to describe him in the past tense, but he was, he grappled with serious policy issues. He started this Young Guns network that was seeking new ideas, seeking to frame Republican proposals in a way that would appeal to middle-class voters. He was part of this publication that just came out called Room to Grow, that is full of really
terrible ideas,
substantive proposals for reform. And as you say, Kevin McCarthy is more of a fixer. He's more of a backslapper, and he's very popular with the members. Therefore, he probably won't have any trouble getting elected majority leader. But he isn't quite as substantive, or at least he hasn't been up until now. We'll see; he could change. But he hasn't been, as you say, one of the intellectuals of the House.
I want to go to Iraq, Mona, just momentarily, because it's about to overwhelm even the majority leader vote, and I believe Mr. McCarthy will be the new majority leader, and that's good for California. However, the majority leader does not have a hand in this present crisis in Iraq. Right. As I understand it right now, this is fog of war. There's no good fix of what's going on the battlefield. However, we can talk policy. The Obama administration, several years ago, was unable to come to an agreement with Mr. Maliki's government, and the consequence is the American military is not involved in the Iraq security. We're watching Iraq collapse to the same people that Syria's collapsed to, and we can anticipate that this stain will grow throughout the Middle East. So, Mona, the hard question to you, does Barack Obama duck and stay with his domestic agenda, or does he get involved in the world? It's not a good world. It's not a bad world. He doesn't have the perfect army for it. He doesn't have a bad army for it. Does he wade into this and risk his legacy in order to restore comity in the Middle East?
Look, the president has been extremely consistent that he believes firmly, and I think sincerely, I think he's wrong, but he believes that that we got ourselves into a terrible pickle by putting troops into Iraq, and even he believed it was time to pull them out of Afghanistan. And I cannot imagine that even in this situation that he would, having just explained to the whole world in his West Point speech, that just because you have the best hammer doesn't mean every problem is a nail, and on with these,
straw men.
Yes, exactly. A straw man about the use of military force, that it's either all or nothing, that but I don't see that he can really climb down. That has been his position. He's staked it out very boldly, that he does not believe in military. He thinks that diplomacy is the way to handle serious problems internationally, like Iran's pursuit of a nuclear weapon. He doesn't see that, as Frederick the Great said, diplomacy without arms is like music without instruments. He doesn't get that insight. He thinks that you either use military force or you use diplomacy, and isn't it better to use diplomacy? And of course, diplomacy that isn't backed up by the threat of force is hollow and feeble, and that's what it has been in this administration. And it looks like the Iranians are going to march into the possession of nuclear weapons sometime very soon, if they don't already have the capability. And it looks like the president is going to permit a rejuvenated and revived Al-Qaeda Sunni insurgency to prevail in Iraq. I cannot imagine him sending ground troops. Cannot imagine it.
Mona, the president is the commander-in-chief. He represents one part of the Democratic Party. But when does the other half of the Democratic Party that sees the same reality that you just outlined revolt?
Oh, I don't think it's half, Mary.
You think it's more?
I think it's far less. I don't think there is the old Henry Jackson, Sam Nunn, sort of hawkish national security Democrats. I mean, I suppose there's Dianne Feinstein, who occasionally makes noises in that direction, but other than that, I really don't think you can even say it's a wing of the Democratic Party that feels that way anymore. I think that most of the overwhelming majority of the Democratic Party is extremely dovish with President Obama, and I don't see a revolt on their
Mona,
side.
Mona, I'm going to be hard on you, Mona. Can the President of the United States, and I'll ask Mary this, can the President of the United States watch Baghdad burn? Can he do that? Is that a political possibility?
Yes.
Mary?
I think this is the only president who can.
Okay. Mona Charen of the National Review Online, Mary Kissel of the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal and the host of Opinion Journal. And Mary spoke with Dan Henninger today, deputy editor of the editorial board, and he had an equally glum opinion of this president when it comes to Baghdad. We'll see. Events are in the saddle. I'm John Batchelor.